Good day, everyone. Today we will be talking about the first character introduced in Season 2 of Chaos Zero Nightmare 9. So, 9 is a Vanguard Order character and is a mercenary who stands firm and fearless on the battlefield. The 4 stars accompanying 9 for this rotation is both Ray and Amir. Amir being a pretty good pickup in combination with 9, and Ray is a solid controller choice for every character team. So what makes 9 unique compared to Calliope, for example? They both serve the same purpose. They do shields, they do damage, and they all have white hair. So what makes 9 different is that she's more centered towards dealing more damage through her setup, through her unique card, Hue. So Hue is a card that has a lot of tags: unique, initiation, exhaust, and ephemeral. So unique is a tag wherein you can only have one copy of this card on your entire deck. Initiation is that this card is top decked, or you always pull this card into your hand during the start of combat. Exhaust is that whenever you play this card, this gets placed in your exhaust pile. And ephemeral is that whenever you end your turn, if this card is still in your hand, you exhaust it. So Hue, similar to Vulture Ejection, is your primary card that you should be building around it. So depending on the combination of epiphanies, items, and the new condition refinement, we can choose how we want to build 9 as. So before we go through all of the epiphanies and all the combinations of the strategies, let's go through all of our cards one by one. Just a preface, the Slash card over here is already upgraded through her potential. So Slash is 130%, I believe, defense-based damage costing 1 AP. And whenever you play this card, it increases damage amount of exhaust cards by 15% for one turn, maximum of 2. So Slash is pretty interesting. It seems like the developers of CZN are catering towards, or at least trying to understand why the basic cards that most of the characters have are typically removed. So given this condition having max 2 stacks, you may consider not removing the basic cards depending on how you want to play 9 as. Back edge parry, 100%. This is just a standard shield card that everyone has. I'm assuming everyone's going to just remove this from their deck. The next one is Hue. So, like I've said before, Hue is your primary card you should be building around us. So there are 5 epiphanies, and we can consider the other ones as well, like the morale, the vulnerable, as later on. But for the first one, it's Ironclad. It seems like going forward, they're going to be adding specific names for each epiphanies. So for Hue specifically, Ironclad is a 480% defense-based damage with 240% shielding, and on Incinerate or whenever this card is exhausted, it creates 1 Hue Ironclad level 1. So an interesting mechanic for Hue is that if you choose any of these epiphanies right here, they can scale up to level 3 or level 5 depending on the epiphany you've chosen. So specifically for Ironclad, on level 2 it becomes 696%, which is a huge upgrade for 576. And then on level 3, it becomes 840% defense-based damage with 1 to 40% shielding. So this card is really good pickup. Not only does it provide good amounts of shielding by giving you a straight up 200%, plus it also gives you a huge amount of DPS increase. Like it's 500, 700, and then it's on 840. That's an amazing card to pick up. The next one would be Extreme. So Extreme is that one condition where all the rest of the cards gives you up to level 3, but Extreme gives you up to level 5. The only caveat in this is that you can only target one character. And there's a card later on that activates a Hue card on hand, but the targeting is random. And later on we'll be discussing one of the dupes that could help you in selecting a target for Hue. Okay, so for Hue Extreme, it starts at 432% because I have level 10 on my potentials. Becomes 500, 660, 816, and 1200. The jump alone from level 4 to level 5 is tremendous. and should be considered. To preface as well that after you finish all of the levels, so level 1, level 2, level 3, it goes back to going to the basic card and then you'll go back to level 1. So it's level 3, base card, and then back to level 1. Next one is Flash. So the difference here in Flash is that it's given initiation, so you'll always have it on hand. It starts as 480% with base. On level 1, it becomes 576, 700%, and then 840. The next one would be Massacre. So the main difference with Massacre and the other Q cards is that Massacre becomes an AoE attack. And depending on the number of enemies that you are targeting, it reduces the damage by 10%. So if you have 4, it has a decreased damage amount by 40%. So it's at base Q, it becomes 480. On level 1, 576, 700%, and 840. But it's still an AoE damage card. So this is a card you could consider picking up. But if we're going to rank it later on, I'll talk about it more later. And then the last one is going to be Ambush. So Ambush gets the initiation tag as well. So whenever an ally counterattacks, activate this card. So I've stated before that she combos well with characters that have counterattacks such as Magna, Amir, and if you have the equipment, maybe, or the new equipment cards that grant you counterattack per turn. So on base Ambush, it's 480%. On level 1, it becomes 576. Level 2 is 700. And level 3 is 840. So if we were going to rank the hues, or how I would prefer picking up my hues, it would be Ironclad, Extreme, Massacre. The reason why I don't want to pick up Flash over here is that it just adds the bonus tag of Ignition, wherein if this card is in hand, when a card is exhausted, decrease the cost of this card by 1 until used. So it just becomes a 2-cost card. I'm not sure as to why you should pick this up, personally speaking, because you really want to cater your build around either playing around a counterattack or an upgrade card using Ambush, or you want to provide shield to the team and deal a lot of damage through Ironclad, or maybe you want to AoE sweep everyone through Massacre, or you just want to single target nuke someone through Extreme. My main issue with Flash is that the decreased cost is nice, but what if you get an epiphany wherein you reduce card cost by 1? Or you get the new refinement where you reduce the card cost by 1. So this doesn't seem too much of a priority whenever you pick. So if I were going to pick, it's going to be Ironclad 1, Extreme 1, Massacre 1, and Ambush 2. And then maybe Flash 5. So depending how you want to build your 9 towards, or whoever you're trying to build with 9, you can just select however you want any of these cards. They're all really strong, and they all do pretty good amounts of damage so far. Next would be Experience Last. So it's a 1-cost card, dealing 160 more or less defense-based damage, 20% damage-based shield. So depending on the damage you dealt, you get 20% of it as a shield. And then it increases the amount of exhaust cards by 20% for one turn. So this is multiplicative, and you could consider this as a combo card. So for example, you play this card, you play Slash, and then you play Extreme 5. You can imagine what's going to happen. It deals a lot of damage. So let's talk about the Epiphany. So base Epiphany or Extreme Strike right here, 250% damage, originally from 168. This is plus 90%, I believe. And then it increases the damage of exhaust card by 30%. So this is from 20 going 30% damage. So don't forget, this is 30% multiplicative damage. Second one is that it increases damage as well. And then if a card was exhausted this turn, so if you play Hue already and then you play this card again, you increase the damage of the second card by 30% for one turn until used. The third one would be same numbers, but it has an added condition is that increase shield gain amount of skill cards by 30%. So you're trying to build up more shields. You can consider it like something similar to Resolve, I guess. Number 4 is that it does not gain the additional 90% defense based damage, but it does get an additive plus 60% damage amount for each exhaust card in hand. So let's say you're playing Lucas or Renoa or Luke, and then you have like a billion exhaustible cards, maybe Kayron. So you can imagine what could happen. So if you have 6, or if you have 10, you have plus 600% damage amount for each card in hand. So this becomes 1168, I believe. So this could be a really good combo piece if you're playing around surrounding exhaust units or exhaust cards. Number 5 is 250% damage died. And for one turn, when an exhaust card is activated, plus 1 counterattack. So this is what you pair with characters with counterattack or characters that buck counterattack. Maybe like Narja. Or maybe you want to pair with other counterattack units such as Amir or Magna. Or you want to build 9 as the main counter unit. Given the changes with counterattack such that you could deal more damage now and you can now crit. For the next card, it will be a Fatal Strike, which is a 1-cost attack card that deals 160 around that range defense-based damage. It has the effect of increased damage amount by 20% for each cost of the highest cost exhaust card in hand. Then exhaust that card. So for example, you have 5 2-cost exhaustible cards. It will become plus 100% to the 160% damage. So 268 around that. So let's look through the epiphanies. The first one being Fatal Strike. 250% around that. And from 20%, it jumps to 30%. The next card would be 2-cost Fatal Strike. So from 160%, it becomes 312. But you lose the effect in exchange for increased damage amount by 20% for each cost of the highest cost card in hand. So it removes the caveat that you need an exhaustible tag for that high cost card, but it still retains the 20%. The next one is now Fatal Strike. 5 cost, unique, ignition, and retain. And it changes the hue, which is the unique card or the stick card or the main card that you're playing around 9 to its final level. So when, for example, you have extreme level 1, when you use this card, it becomes extreme level 5. You can see the combo here. It could be really hard to do, but because it has unique and retain as well as ignition, you can see that there are ways to circumvent the cost of the card. And of course, you can always pair characters that reduces the cost of this card. The next one is the Fatal Strike. With 1 cost card, exhaust 2 random exhaust cards of other combatants. This is a very important caveat in hand. And for each exhausted through this ability, increase damage amount of the next attack cards of this unit, so 9 specifically, by 30%. So this card is heavily favored or heavily influenced by your team. And it has to have the caveat that any of your teammates need to have an exhaustible card at that. So it's either through neutral cards or their own cards. So possibly you could use it for Kayron, possibly you can use it for the bullet characters, but you have to take note of this caveat. The next one is it gets a tag of retain, 252% from 168, I believe, and increases damage amount by 80% for each ally owning counterattack. So this becomes around 240%, assuming that all 3 of your combatants have counterattack. So the only issue that this card had, it's a purely offensive skill card, and 252% plus 240. So let's just say around 500% damage is kind of not worth it. Seeing that you need the caveat of having 3 combatants with counterattack. But still, if you're still eyeing for like a combo piece or a card that benefits from characters in your team that have counterattack, this is still a pretty okay pickup. So if I were to rate the cards, it would probably be 4. Assuming if you play teammates that have exhaustible cards, maybe 1, maybe 3. So just use your own preference in this matter and your purposes of the cards. But otherwise, I don't see any value in them. And perhaps I would just remove them just to keep the hands pretty clean. So not too impressed with this card, actually. Okay. The next one would be Counterblade. So Counterblade's an upgrade card of 0 cost, which has a tag of unique. So whenever a shield is gained through an ability, so a skill card, gain 1 Honed Edge. The Honed Edge is a unique buff from 9, which increases defense-based damage amount of attack cards by 20% at maximum 3, so 60% for 1 turn. Okay, so for the first upgrade, it would be whenever a card is exhausted. So it does not necessarily have to be her own. It can be a teammate's. Do take note of this. I could be wrong, but this is based from my experience. The second one is still a 0 cost unique, and then it increases shield gain amount by 15%. And when shield is gained through an ability, gain 1 honed edge. So it's still the same, but you have the added benefit of getting additional shield gain. So number 3 is it gains an initiation tag, and when a shield is gained through an ability, 1 honed edge. You can see this is just okay, but it has the initiation, so you get this card out of your deck immediately, and it being a 0 cost is really a good benefit. Number 4 is that when counterattack is gained, 1 honed edge plus. So 1 honed edge plus increase defense-based damage of allies by 20%. So originally, honed edge only pertains to your character alone. So 9. So only 9 gets this benefit. But because you take this one, honed edge plus, you can share it with the entire team. So if you look how we're trying to describe our team making, this is one of the teams that you can absolutely go for. Is the counter teams with Magna, with Maribel, with any Calipe if you get the item. And then the last one, it gains 1 AP cost, but at the start of the turn, activate Hue in hand 1 time. You might run out of hues whenever you use this, because it activates. It only has 1 base hue and then 3 levels of hue, and then if you use it all, you have to wait for the next turn to get back your base hue to cycle the turns. But that's quite a negligible thing. So if I were to rank this, the first one would be 1. If you're going for an extreme build, you have to take 5. But if I were going to say, all of these are really good in their own right. 1 is super easy to activate if you're playing around exhaustible cards with, for example, the bullet characters. Number 2, you don't necessarily need the shield gain, but it's really useful. And it still has a benefit of getting honed edge. Number 3 is that you gain the initiation. It's okay if you have like something that gives you counter or something that's shield gain. So this is an alright card to pick up. Number 4 is very reliant on your team makeup. So you really have to circle around the team that has counterattacks, self counterattack buffs. Basically, I'm just trying to say that all of these cards are really good. All right, next card, Fighting Spirit. So this is our ultimate card. Activates one highest cost card of this unit, so 9. Then exhaust those cards. So specifically, this card circles around Hue or is practically copied just for spamming Hue. This is really a good card to play around. There are multiple types of builds that need a copy, at least one copy of Fighting Spirit. Unless if you have like specific build paths that you want to go, such as Flash. But otherwise, you'll practically this is the prime copy card for 9. So you must be wondering, who should you partner with 9? At first glance, you may think it's Alcea. However, for the number one pickup that you should use, if and only if you have maximum dupes of that partner, it would be Wilhelma, which is currently the rate up 4-star partner. But if you do not have Wilhelma at max dupes, you could probably use Alcea. So first, let's look through Alcea. Alcea is the partner character associated with 9. If you watched the story or read through it, you can tell that they are really partnered with each other. So let's go through it. So Alcea grants the assigned combatants 8% defense. And when an exhaust card of the assigned combatant is exhausted or activated, increases the damage amount of the next attack card by 20%, which is only up to 1 stack. And what 2 cost or higher card of the assigned combatant is exhausted, gain 100% shield. So you might be thinking this card or this partner is heavily catered for 9, and it is. But let's look through her ego skill. So her ego skill, 250% defense-based damage, and applies 5 caustic remarks. So caustic remarks increases damage amount taken from the assigned combatant by 20%. So it's a debuff to the enemy. So whenever the enemy gets hit by 9, for example, they receive 20% more damage. And if the target owns a shield, increase the additional damage amount by 10%. So this is additive. And on effect, activation decrease caustic remarks by 1. So you must be thinking, for a partner, she's really catered to 9. Why should we not use her? Or rather, why is she not the number one choice? Just for the fact that at maximum dupes, Wilhelmina grants the combatant defense by 24%. 24 in comparison to 8, the numbers just explains it. And when the assigned combatant targets a vulnerable target, plus 20% defense-based damage of attack cards. And her ego skill is now 2 points, and it grants 2 morale and 1 fortitude. Fortitude being the reduces a damage amount for each fortitude, so reducing minus 40%. So the caveats here is that in the event that you have Wilhelmina at max dupes and you can constantly apply vulnerability to the enemy, Wilhelmina could be possibly the better option. However, if you want the ease of use, Alcea is still a really good choice. So once again, just to reiterate, they're both good. One is better if they have the perfect conditions, while the other is on the fly, a really good character to pair up with. So choose your poison. They're both good. But for me, I think I'll be transitioning towards Wilhelmina in the future. So let's talk about the key pickups that you should do on 9's potentials. First one, obviously, would be increasing her critical chance as much as possible. 10% is really big. Next would be this card, of course. You're playing around her unique card Hue. A lot of the damage increase comes from basically trying to push Q to its maximum damage as much as possible, as well as the depending on what build you go for, the shield gains is really beneficial for it. The next one is this one. For the third big node, if Nine's defense is greater than 300% plus 5 attribute damage amount. And for every 10, gain plus 2% for the additional modifier, and it goes up to 10%. So when you're trying to build around 9, you should do take note about this condition. And for the other big nodes, plus 30% additive damage to Slash, which is our basic attack card, and adds the following effect. Increases damage amount of exhaust card by 15% for 1 turn, up to 2 stacks, so it becomes 30%. And for the second big node, it's plus 5 damage amount to 9 Slash. If 9's defense is greater than 250, add an additional 5%, so it becomes 10%. This isn't too important pickup. So if I were to get 9's potential, it would be these crit chance, max it out as soon as possible. You can then get this one, max out this unique card upgrade, and then lastly this one. So upgrade these two if you do plan to hit their defense requirements. As for memory fragments, so 9 being a defense-based character, you may think that you could go for the 2-set defense-based set bonus thing. However, the best set that you can go for right now is the new memory fragment, which at 4 sets, Beast of Yearning increases damage amount of Justice and Order exhaust cards by 30%. So 9 being a Order character benefits a lot from this. And you don't have to like go through a lot of building towards it, because this set is basically just very straightforward, no effort needed to think about, and such a damage increase towards her kit. So as for the second set, it can go for anything. Personally, if I were to choose, as long as you hit the substats required, which we'll talk about later, it can be any set. But if I were to choose, it would probably be Execution set, which is a increase. Which would be increases critical damage amount by plus 25%. So what stats do you particularly need for 9? First important substats would be getting crit rate, crit chance as high as possible. The next one would be crit damage. And because she is a defense-based character, defense flat stat is super important, so you can hit the minimum requirement for the damage thresholds for those big note cards, and then defense percent. Flat stat is very important in this game because all of the characters in this game have generally low integer stats, and flat stats really pump up the numbers substantially. So once again, crit rate, crit damage, and both of the defense stats are imperative for a 9 build. So what should you pick up for your 4th set? Crit chance as always. And for your 5th set, it would be probably order damage, since she deals order-based damage, and maybe attack percent. Lastly, this should be a defense percent. So pretty straightforward build for 9. As always, this gearing is still RNG, so I'm hoping for the best for you guys. And then the next thing we'll talk about is her dupes. Alright. So for the first dupe, Sleeping Memory, targets may be selected for attack with the Fighting Spirit card. So Fighting Spirit is her ultimate card, which activates Hue, or the highest cost accessible card on hand, which is just gonna be you. And if you have a Hue that has no AoE, for example, like Massacre, it will hit a random enemy. So if you have 3, you have 1 out of 3 chance of hitting the character that you want, enemy that you want. And it's kind of annoying sometimes. So this being granting the effect of targeting enemies using fighting spirit is quite a good QOL, but you do not necessarily need it. As long as the enemy that you're facing doesn't necessarily like summons minions during the turn, it doesn't seem imperative to pick it up just for the sake of this. Number 2, Awakening Memory. At the start of battle, create 1 exploit opening card. And the effect of exploit opening card is deals 1 vulnerable and 1 tenacity damage. So this is a new card whenever you unlock her E2. As you can see, it has Exhaust 2, Retrieve and Retain. So this card I don't necessarily support using or endorse saying that you should go up to E2. It seems to me that this is a necessary card. It's nice to have, but there are still other means of applying vulnerability. So number 3, Vivid Memory. Adds plus 150 damage amount to Reflection 0. Reflection 0 is our ego skill, which deals 400% defense-based damage to all enemies. And with the dupe, it becomes 550, I believe. Or I may be wrong. And plus 50% damage amount to the modifier for the combined cost of the 2 highest cards. Does the damage increase? Doesn't seem that important. Number 4. So when 9's cards are exhausted, gain 1 improvisation equal to the cost of cards. So improvisation plus 50% defense-based damage amount to 9's attack cards for 1 turn up to 30%. So it becomes 150%. So basically it's just an additive 150%. Not if it were like multiplicative, it would be substantial amount damage increase. But for it just being additive in conjunction to being her 4th dupe, this isn't important pickup. Okay, number 5. Increases level amount of unique card upgrade to plus 3, so from 10 becomes 13. Assuming her multipliers are really good throughout her entire kit, this is a really good damage increase, but definitely not necessary to pick up. The last one, when new cards are activated, inflict 15% of the damage dealt to the target as fixed damage. So this becomes 15% of your, for example, let's say you have extreme level 5, you have all the buffs known to mankind applied to her, so the damage amount that you dealt times 0.15 you deal towards the enemy as a fixed damage amount. Very big damage increase, but once again, for me, I don't see the point of investing in 9's dupes. It's up to you if you really like the character, but you don't necessarily need it. So let's talk about our builds. Currently, this is one of the better builds that I have. It still has slash, but it uses extreme Q. And the entire kit around this is me spamming fighting spirit to get as much Q damage as possible. And we can see the new thing added to the recent season, which grants the bonus effect through the arena. And it's quite straightforward. So what equipments during the chaos runs you should pick up for 9? So in the current season, Burning Life, this planet gives the best things for 9. It's practically catered towards cards that's around shield gain, exhaust, and all the likes. So you should be running chaos runs in the event that you want to build 9 through the Burning Life. It has, in my previous video, I talk about how many things that benefit around those things. But basically, I'll list all the good weapons over here. The first one being Brilliant Eternal Flames, which increases damage amount of 2 cost plus exhaust cards by 40%. 40% multiplicative damage. That's a huge buff. and it has the caveats of needing it to be a 2 cost in addition for the card to be exhaustible. Practically build towards 9. So if you're trying to build 9,
So the next one,
you should
if we're gonna talk about
just
the
for a
armor,
rule of thumb for
Robe of
9
Oblivion,
specifically,
which is a card that
all
you can pick up through an
overheal
encounter, I
cards
believe.
dictate a playstyle that you should do.
When shield
And
is gained through an
basically
exhaust
all the
card,
other
increases damage
FFA
amount by
cards that
20%.
has
So if you're playing around Ironclad, this is a really good
forces
pickup.
you, or at least
But there are still
guides
other
you
cards that
towards
you,
a specific
equipment that you can
archetype.
pick up, of course.
It's quite intuitive in a way.
Maybe
Like,
for the
example, if you go
accessories,
for
one big pickup that you can do is
Ironclad, you pick
summon
up the
lump
epiphanies
of
that
light,
give you
which
shield
increases
gain,
damage
for
amount of the
example,
third attack cards
and
created
you
by
just
30%.
spam fighting spirit. It's
For
in the
one
same
turn. So when
class
you,
with
whenever
like
you
Massacre,
create
where you spam fighting spirit,
an attack
and
card,
if you want to play like
which
Flash,
is
for example,
probably
you just
going to be huge,
reduce the
you're
amount of cards that Nine
multiplicatively
has and then
increasing
spam
the damage
Flash
amount by
robe.
30%.
So
33% is a really big damage.
should you pick
So some other
up
good
Nine?
equipment
In my
you can
opinion,
take, if you like the character,
could be like
of
sword
course,
reflective.
you pick it up. Sword
It's
reflected
really
in the lake.
appealing to the eyes.
If you have
plays
6 or
really
more
well,
cards in hand,
quite simple to
increase
play
damage
with,
by 25%.
has a lot of build variations
Since
because
you're
of how
playing
Hue
around
is.
Hue being activated by itself.
For example,
And
if you're
personally,
using
I would say
Fighting
yes.
Spirit, is she going
This
to
is
break
such a
the
good
game?
pickup to do.
Maybe.
And of course, there are other
But
pickups.
of course, when you're playing
Just do
these
take note
types of
that
games,
generally
you
speaking,
yourself as a
all
player
the
should be
equipments
able
that
to
give
choose
an effect
whether or not you want to play the
through
character.
exhaust, this is a
Would be
PvE game,
good for
and
her.
you should just have fun. So that's it for the video. Thanks for passing by. Appreciate you all, guys, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.